Good morning, Cherries fans, and welcome to yet another video podcast on the channel. So, yesterday, AFC Bournemouth entertained Watford at the Vitality Stadium, and it was billed as a relegation six-pointer. It felt like the hype surrounding this game was something we hadn't experienced in a long, long time. It had the atmosphere of a big game, especially at the start. Probably more so for us than Watford, to be fair. Jeff Hayward's with me once again, and Jeff, good to have you back on again. And dare I ask how your Sunday has been thus far?
Abysmal.
Oh, terrible!
Terrible.
I mean, what a bad performance! It was not good. You weren't there today, but you were seeing the things that we didn't see. This is obviously a very raw recording. The match has finished only 2-3 hours ago, and haven't had much chance to take in what's going on Twitter and the media reaction. But what was your view from where you were about things on the pitch?
It followed a pattern that's very similar since the Chelsea game. When we played against Burnley, Watford did the same. They put a lot of men behind the ball, and we lacked the creative spark to create anything. Reminded me of Brighton, where we couldn't pass the ball to each other for long periods, and there was no zip or fluidity to the way we were playing. And it reminded me of West Ham, where after the first goal we seemed to pretty much give up, thinking, well, we can't even get one goal, so we may as well just, not bother.
Yeah, it was really poor. And, before the game, we obviously looked at it as a game that was a must-win match in a segment of games that we thought, well, we have to win these. They are winnable games. We've got Norwich, we've got Aston Villa coming up, and there are other teams as well that are in and around us. Thankfully, Villa are capitulating at the moment at home to Manchester City. Not that match is probably finished by now, actually, but they didn't do too well, but we didn't do too well afterwards. So, 1 o'clock, teams were announced. Some things did surprise me, some things didn't. Nathan Ake, I said in the preview, I'm pretty sure he'll come back. I was chatting to, I think, commercial manager or whatever, Rob, at the game beforehand, and he sort of said, just wait and see. So that, to me, thought Ake is a shoo-in, which was a good thing after Chris Mepham, of course, or Mepham as you call it, wasn't. Who knows? As he wasn't selected due to obviously having an injury on his knee. He's going to be out for 12 weeks. And it looked like a 4-4-2 lineup, but then you sort of look at it and, Ake was on the left-hand side.
He played 3-5-2 pretty much, with Frano, Cookie and Ake on the left. Ake was a sort of left-back, left centre-half for much of the game, mostly marking the speedy winger that Watford have got. Playing just in front of him was Fraser, and then Adam Smith was pushing forward on the right. Didn't work.
No, it did. I mean, it's quite interesting you say that, because the way it transpired to me now, I was in the main stand for today's game, and it is a different angle, so you don't really get to see the formations as well as what you do when you're behind the goal in the north stand. But I thought originally it was a 4-4-2 with Ake on the left, and then with Frano and Cook in the middle, and then with Smith on the right. But as you say, it transpires, it was slightly different. And there were a few players that were in there that were maybe unexpected. Not least Aaron Ramsdale was out, and Travers was in as well,
which was a surprise. Ramsdale picked up a hammy, our favourite injury of the moment.
Yeah, of course.
Friday. I think it was, in training, but that was a surprise. When you looked at the bench, you thought, hang on a minute, Stanislas isn't there, so I think he'd been providing a bit of zip, albeit rusty zip. That's an interesting way of putting it.
Rusty zip.
But he wasn't even in the squad, so maybe he's picked up an injury as well, because I think he deserved to be at least on the bench. And he was playing Solanke up front again with Wilson. So, I've reflected a lot on this, and I've felt that we can bang on about formations. We can go on and on about he's not picking the right team, he's not picking the right formation, he's not picking the right players who are available to play in those slots. Actually, what it comes down to, and what it came down to in the game today, I thought was heart, appetite. Watford had it in spades. They were first to every ball. They were physical. They were on it. They were playing as a team. I looked at what our players were doing, and it pains me to say this, but I think we've given up already.
Seems like it. And what you were saying, I bang on the 8th of January, I tweeted, because there were a lot of fans talking about on Twitter about what's our best formation. Obviously certain formations perform better against different teams. And I said, I'm sure there's a conclusive answer in terms of what formation works best. But I said at the time, we're in danger of paralysis by analysis, by overanalyzing it. And I said, the key sort of constructs of the game are hunger, desire, strength, tenacity, the technical basics, and they've not been adhered to for a long time. So it doesn't matter what formation you play when those particular things are not being adhered to. Now, speaking of Ramsdale, Jeff, I'm going to tell you now, today I was hobnobbing with the stars. That's right. I wouldn't say hobnobbing. I was in hospitality today. It was a very kind offer stroke of luck, really, from James Rood. Thank you, James. Had a really nice day. And like a ticket came up, so I thought, well, why not? Let's do it. And before the game, there was an interview with Aaron Ramsdale. So Jimmy Glass, he's the kind of man behind the mic who chats to the restaurant and introduces the man of the match player afterwards, but also has a player interview beforehand, of which was Aaron Ramsdale. Now, at the time, I wasn't aware that he was out, but whilst he was speaking, I was looking at the team like, oh my goodness, he's out. So I was listening closely to what he was saying, and he said that, he has got a bit of a hamstring injury, but he wanted to play. He felt absolutely fine, but the medical staff declared that he shouldn't, based on his injury, which is like, well, how can you do that to Aaron Ramsdale now, but not Chris Mepham last week against Luton, where he was made to play on and obviously has suffered a horrendous injury as a result? You just there seems to be a little bit of inconsistency there.
It seems to me that we're losing the plot a bit on injuries, number one. Number two, formations and team play. Number three, tactics. I didn't really see any insight into what we were trying to do to beat Watford today, other than get the ball to Fraser and try and get behind them. That seemed to be, there's been a lot of talk about, intensity and creativity and creating chances this week in training. Evidence, pretty thin on the ground. And the pressure's getting to the team, it's getting to the manager, it's getting to the staff. We're not making clear-minded decisions. We're all in it together, but we're all in a complete fug about what to do. And
you just say fug problem. Then, didn't you?
Fug.
All right, thank goodness for that.
It's a kind of
the bleep filter on that.
Yeah, don't put the bleeper on. That's fine. It's a kind of cross between what you might be thinking and fog. We don't know what we're doing, and it's painful to watch.
How did the atmosphere come across on TV? Because it started off pretty good, and now, so basically, to put people who may not be aware in the loop, the club put out like 5,000 flags so that people could wave them about. Obviously, that's not what really does it. It's the noise that happens. And yes, we were fairly vocal. I think it was a great decision to have Nonny as the fans champion. So he's the guy that walks onto the pitch with the ball. They always have a fans champion, and usually they've done something great in the community or like overcome some adversities. And it was great to have Nonny on there. Mike Botto referred to his difficulties that he has with sight and various things like that. he took the ball onto the pitch, he gave a red army, that was great. It then transpired that Aaron Ramsdale was sat in the north stand, like very central, like 10 rows back, like row H or row I or whatever. And he was orchestrating a number of the red armies. And, as the things were happening before kickoff, I thought, this has got that kind of feel again. The feel of, together, we're always moving forward, like anything is possible. And the match started relatively well. We had a few chances, but Watford seemed to be first to every 50-50. They seemed to have more desire, more hunger, more possession. They weren't giving the ball up as easy, and they were creating the better chances. The first half, I'd say, there weren't many. Bournemouth had a chance. It was a shot from outside the box that was palmed wide by Ben Foster. But in terms of the atmosphere, what did you feel from watching on TV? Did it sound like the Dean Court of old?
Yeah, atmosphere was terrific. I think the noise, you could feel that the crowd was really behind the team, certainly more behind the team than they have been in some of the more recent fixtures at home, and it felt great, and the team started fairly well. 9th minute, when we got that free kick, Gozzo got fouled, Harry Wilson steps up, your fingers are double crossed that ends up in the top corner.
Oh, that was it, the Harry Wilson shot. Yeah, that's right.
Didn't quite get there. As it transpired, that was our only shot on target in the entire game in the 9th minute.
Scary.
I think what happened after that was we started the same old problem that we'd played against West Ham, where we're trying to pass the ball out from the back and conceding possession even before the ball gets over the halfway line. And that was meat and drink to Watford. I think they'd watched the West Ham game, saw what West Ham did, and thought, we'll just do the same. And they did. And we were not smart enough to play through it. There was only one occasion where Travers picked out Solanke on the halfway line, and it started actually quite a promising attack for us. That was it. The other times, it was get the ball to Frano looking for Adam Smith, sometimes getting him, sometimes not. No available player in the middle. What's he do? Pass it either to Cook or back to Travers, or try and pass it forward and concede possession with Watford on the front foot straight away. And it was killing us. And I think that's where the momentum in the crowd started to shift. I don't know what you thought in the stadium, but it was almost like, here we go again. The players are not learning. The coaching staff aren't learning. We're not figuring this out. We're so easy to play against.
Yeah, it started to feel like we couldn't string more than 3 or 4 passes together at some stage. And Watford very quickly realised that they could press our defenders. And, obviously the whole idea of the press is that you can play it out from the back. You can draw the forwards or attackers from the opposition forward and then create massive gaps between the lines, play between the lines. But the thing is, we weren't doing that at all. And then we tried to do what most Premier League teams do, and we failed on 42 minutes when Decore ended up putting it back in the net. And I haven't seen it. I've only seen it live, Jeff, so you'll have to excuse me for being a bit naive in my opinion. But tell me. Can
I talk you through it? Okay, so Travers gives the ball to Francis. Francis has the pass out to Adam Smith, doesn't play it for whatever reason. Maybe he thought it's too risky. Plays it back to Travers, not onto his right foot, onto his left foot. Travers tries to hit it away with his right foot, doesn't welly it, chips it straight to the Watford player, can't remember his name, and the goal comes from that. The other thing on the left-hand side, Cookie does not give Travers an angle to play it to the side, so that was the only thing he could do. Okay, he should have wellied it into the stand and gone for safety, but he's 20 years old, and he just hit a perler of pass to Solanke, so he probably thought, I could do the same again.
It doesn't match our philosophy, and you just wonder how much the players maybe get criticised for not doing, or berated by the management for not doing or not playing the Bournemouth way. But sometimes you just got to get rid, and that was one of those stages. If you're going to be doing that, playing out from the back, you've got to have the technical ability to be able to do it. With ease, and we haven't. We've always looked relatively shaky at the back. There's a few players that are fairly confident. Nathan Ake is the most confident centre back, and then Steve Cook, I'd say, after him. But other than that, Francis has sort of lost his edge somewhat, and shouldn't have been putting Travers back in that position, and he could argue that maybe Travers could have got rid of it, etc. But it just seemed like we cause our own problems. It wasn't a goal that Watford, I would say, deserved at the time. I mean, yes, they had the bulk of possession and they were probably the better side, but was it a sort of 1-0 scoreline? No, it wasn't. It would have been more than okay if it was 0-0, but then they got that goal, but we completely gifted it to them, and it just seems to be time and time again this kind of thing seems to be happening where we're almost digging our own grave and almost paving our own path to the Championship.
Yeah, the defence seems to have lost its confidence. I just think we've lost our sense of shape. Again, if you're going to play Ake, play him as a centre half. Don't play him out on the left like that.
Well, surely we learned that at Leicester. Was it Leicester that he played on the left, or I can't remember the game earlier in the season, but he played on the left. It didn't work, did it?
No, and we go back to that, and I don't understand it. You've got Rico on the bench. If Rico's fit, play Rico, play Cook, play Ake, play Francis or Smith. Don't play both of them.
It doesn't make sense, yeah.
That I think fundamentally with a new goalkeeper playing as well, it destabilised the team. That shape, they're not comfortable with it. It was a must-win game. The players are too hot and bothered about what we meant to be doing, what position we meant to be playing, rather than actually feeling comfortable. I thought Lerma looked injured to me. He went off early. Yeah. He didn't look 100%. He was okay. I thought that Harry Wilson did some promising things, but he goes over too easy.
Yeah.
He's not experienced enough at winning fouls, and the number of times we lost possession where he fell over, doesn't get a foul, and they play on and break on us. I lost count during the game today.
I'm finding we look for the fouls way too much, and we're almost expecting them. And there are times where Harry Wilson, Adam Smith is probably public enemy number one in terms of this department. Having that sort of almost, what I'm going to do first is try to go down rather than penetrate forward up the pitch. It's like, well, if I get a bit of contact, I'll go down, and it seems to be that's almost in the forefront of their minds. And I thought that like you mentioned Lerma, I think that he looked like he was carrying an injury, wasn't very effective. I feel sorry for players like Andrew Sermon, really, who he's not brilliant, but he's an amazing defensive anchor. He's that kind of CDM figure, like central defensive midfielder that can run things. And like Neil Dawson said on last week's pod, when he gets the ball, he plays it out at pace, which is one thing we always seem to be lacking in the middle of the park. It's this kind of like tiki-taka style of football, but it doesn't really get you anywhere, because by the time you've done all that, Watford have reset and their shape is there ready to defend, whereas Andrew Sermon playing it very quickly out to the wings in front of the wingers so they could run onto it, not have to come back and collect it. And I feel sorry for players like that, and I'll come on to substitutions like Sam Surridge later. Great for him, but that's how much of a situation that we're in, that we're bringing on youth team players basically at the end in order to try to salvage some kind of point from it. But there were many players who were not at the races. I thought Frano made a number of bloopers. Harry Wilson went down too easy. What are your opinions of Dan Gosling in the first half?
Invisible. Is he carrying an injury as well? Don't know. Just
seems like it. Just
off the pace. And where was Solanke today?
I thought the first 5 minutes he did okay. Well, first 5 or 10, he did okay. But I was sat next to this James lad, as I said earlier on, James Rood. Hello if you're listening or watching on YouTube, of course. And we were saying, like, the first 5-10 minutes he was doing all right, but then after that he was just completely invisible. And there were a number of players that just absolutely went missing.
It's not the right team, because you can't. Everybody's got to be 100% united, focused, and believing in what they're doing, in the shape of the team, in their other players, and credit to Nigel Pearson. Watford, absolutely, you've got to take your hats off to them. You and I saw that game where we drew 0-0 at Vicarage Road, and they were unrecognisable from that shambles that were there that day, and were there for the taking. We got a point, but that's another story. And it just shows the certainty that he's brought, and Craig Shakespeare's helping him on the bench. I saw today. What a great team! They have got the best out of those players. They realise what are the strengths of Watford. The strengths are we're big, we're physical. If we're going to force a team to lump it in the box, we're going to win every header, which they did. The two guys in midfield, Capoue and Decore, worked their socks off today.
Yeah, really good.
And normally, you could say that for our midfield. Gosling and Lerma have that in them, but because they were both under par for whatever reason, we didn't match them in that field, and therefore every time we lost the ball, we looked completely overrun. It was depressing to watch. The only player I thought who emerged with any credit, I thought Fraser had his best game for ages, just because they gave him the ball a lot, and he was actually getting the ball to the byline and getting crosses in. The problem was they were able to deal with everything we put in there, because aside from Callum having one turn and shot in the second half, we didn't look like we were ever going to score. That game could have been played for 900 minutes, not alone 90.
Oh yeah. And that was one of the things I was going to actually say was, for all the things that we're saying about Bournemouth, Watford deserve a lot of credit. I know we came up at the same part of the season. In fact, at the start of today, the three teams that were in the relegation zone were the same three teams that got promoted in 2015, as the "Do you remember?" question at the start of the show alludes to. And they get berated, and a lot of fans deride them a lot for this whole managerial kind of merry-go-round that happens. They're employing the same managers that they employed a few years ago, sort of thing. But Nigel Pearson, to his credit, what he did with Leicester. I mean, I said to Neil, he effectively set the foundations for the Premier League winning side that Claudio Ranieri took over, really. So he's a manager that comes with a lot of pedigree, but he's done such a good job there, and the players all seem to be responding to him. Now, it seems to be, for Eddie, the players are not putting in a shift as much as the message may be on point in the dressing room. When they go out there, it's just not happening at all, and you just wonder, are there issues within the dressing room that's causing this kind of, these calamitous performances?
Yeah. If you ask yourself, what is it that motivates you? Doesn't matter what you do, whether you play for a football team, whether you go to work in the day, whether you turn up to do something. You're playing footy tonight, right? What motivates you? There are two. I'll tell you what.
Don't know how I'm going to manage it, but I'll give it a go. 10 chew balls later, but yeah, it'll be fine.
I think there are two key things. Number one is fear, and you get some managers who work like that. Number two is enjoyment, right? None of those players look like they're enjoying being out on that pitch. None of them.
I'll tell you a brief story. I played Sunday football for many a year for a team called Locomotive T&D, and it was formed of a bunch of AFC Bournemouth fans. Sean Barker, who's always been on the podcast since year dot or whatever, he was a big part of that. But Rob Frank, who's currently in Sydney, he was the one that sort of created it. And the T&D stood for touch and dive, which was basically what Steve Robinson did, because he always liked to go over quite easy. So we called ourselves Locomotive T&D. We weren't allowed to call ourselves touch and dive because the BFA it didn't really allow it, and it morphed into a team called Ferndown Locomotive. And one of the games that I played, I was a striker, and my left foot was killing me. I don't know what I did. It got stamped on, it got hurt, and it felt as though my foot was going to fall in half. It just felt absolutely awful. And my manager at the time, Paul Phillips, if you're listening, I'm going to send you this clip. Hello, how are you? At half time, he berated me, and he was like, "Sam, you're playing absolutely dog. You're terrible." And I said, "Mate, I'm in pain. I can't go on for too much longer." He said, "I'm going to give you 10 minutes, but after that, you're off." And he absolutely ripped into me, right? for that for that next 10 minutes, I played out of my skin and scored a worldie from outside the box with my left foot. Not even my stronger foot. I would say I'm quite ambidextrous with the feet or whatever, but it was a left foot shot into the top left-hand corner, scored a goal, and he obviously, got what he wanted out of me. But then after that I said, mate, my foot does actually kill. And he did sub me off anyway, but at least I scored the goal. But I played for the manager at that point in time. But at the moment, it feels like there's no one playing for the team, playing for the shirt, playing for the badge, playing for the manager. And it's quite scary because on the pitch, there seems no unity. Something that's in our mottos, something that we've always historically done, at least over the last 10 years or so. It's quite worrying, isn't it?
It seems to me that they don't believe in it anymore. They don't believe in Eddie.
100%.
And they're not really up for it. They're there. They're earning a salary, but we're going to be doing something else soon because we don't need to take any notice of the manager. We're bored. We've had enough. I mean, it hurts me to say that because at the start of the season we had so much optimism. We had so much excitement at this squad of players that this was the best, deepest squad of players we've ever had, and I just cannot see us getting out of this. Here I am going to say it. We're nailed on relegation. We are the worst team playing football aside from Burnley. Burnley, but at least they've got a way to win, and we haven't at the moment.
Yeah. I agree, and at half-time, 1-0, and a lot of people on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, were saying, this is the most important 45 minutes in our season, but didn't look like it, did it? The way you turned up, it did not look good, and before too long, I say before too long, it was 2-0 after 65 minutes, and our nemesis, Troy Deeney, it seemed like a defensive calamity. I'm not sure how you saw it, but it fell to him and he netted it. First time strike into the corner of the net, and at that point, 65 minutes gone, I'm thinking there is no way back. I was thinking, right, we need to score 3 now, but time ebbed on, and it just wasn't happening.
There was nothing. There were 2 substitutions that got made. So Billing and Lewis Cook came on for Lerma and for Gosling.
Very interesting to completely change the centre of midfield. I've not known that before, where he just makes a complete change. Where's the continuity?
Well,
not that it matters because we were poor, so maybe that's what he was thinking. But to me, it just seems like, okay, now you've got a completely different core. It just seems an odd thing to do.
Yeah, and it speaks about Eddie really not knowing what to do. How many times have we talked about we don't have a clue when a team plays a deep sort of low defence against us? We just don't know what to do. How many times?
Yeah, spoken about so many times.
If I was an opposition coach, I would think just play like West Ham and Watford have played. Just sit deep, hit us on the break, and press us when we have a goal kick, and you'll get a chance and you'll score. Yeah. And it's so heartbreaking to say that because you can look at us and think we ought to have lots of really good attacking options with the players we've got, with the qualities. We've got several internationals in that team, and they can't pass the ball to each other. We have no creativity. Lewis Cook looks sort of creative. He's attempting to play direct through balls. But the touch was off, the link play was off. And tell me, Sam, where are the goals going to come from?
Well, yeah, I remember seeing your text at full time, and it completely worries me. I don't quite know. And the thing is, I would love to blame injury, but I can't even do that because a team that are, so, I mean, we've got so many injuries. Yes, it's terrible, and we are decimated. But I can't even put that as the main reason as how poor we are. It's just tactically we are all over the place, and you're looking at these games ahead. Callum Wilson's not firing. Yeah, he scored against a team that's bottom of the Championship, their reserve side in the FA Cup, a competition that they just wanted to get straight out of. Brilliant, well done, mate. Dom Solanke scored. It wasn't even a goal with any conviction, and you're starting to look like that. Things like that, thinking, well, it wasn't really a clean strike. I don't know. I'm being very negative. However, I really don't know. And for the first time, I'm not questioning Eddie. Because I want him to stay. But for the first time, I'm actually feeling that relegation is more of a certainty than a possibility, which is totally scary, mate.
Who would you rather have as manager, Nigel Pearson or Eddie Howe?
Well, you've got to say that you want the manager. You want a manager that's going to keep you in the Premier League. And Nigel Pearson has proved that he can do that for Watford. I think that Eddie Howe, in the long term, if you could have loan managers, then I would love that, because that's the kind of thing that would be ideal, that someone could come in, do a job, and let the other person sort of take his place when it's done. But yeah, it's quite scary, I suppose. When you have a manager that's focused on the long term, then there is a sort of almost a disability when it comes to how he deals with things in the short term. And that's what I think Eddie Howe has got a severe problem with at the moment. He's not been in a situation as bad as this before. He's always been relatively okay. I think that part of the success of AFC Bournemouth is because there's always been worse teams in the Premier League as well. Easily, season upon season. This season, you're looking at it thinking, well, Villa, Norwich, it's not Watford anymore, no way. It's not Saints, as much as our fans were singing 9-0, battered at home, mind the gap and all that kind of stuff. Saints are flying. They are nowhere near where we are. And you're thinking, right, you're praying for one other team to get sucked into that mix. And at the moment, I'm not sure I can see what team it's going to be.
Who would you rather have, Callum Wilson or Danny Ings?
Oh, Danny Ings, 100%. And if I was Gareth Southgate, you've got to play the player that's in form.
Yeah.
Callum Wilson has not been firing at all, and yet he's not got the same supply line. I've got to say, when you look at our midfield, it's hugely changed. It's hugely changed since what we had a couple of seasons ago. We got Harry Wilson, we got Philip Billing. Early on the season, we had Arnaud Danjuma. We had a lot of these players, even on the wings, Stacey, Rico, who are our sort of attacking fullbacks or wing backs, and they've had to get used to a system that Eddie Howe has tried to instill in a very quick time. They've not been phased in. A lot of Premier League clubs seem to phase in players over 3 or 4 seasons, and ideally I think that's what Eddie Howe wanted, but I think he was forced into doing it very quickly. So you've had all these players trying to get gelling within 3 or 4 months, and it just hasn't happened. And that supply line to Callum has not been there. Ryan Fraser was one of the players that was always feeding Callum, hasn't been. However, the player in himself, you can tell even today, Jeff, the touches that Callum Wilson had, they're just bouncing off him, and he's trying to play these flicks around the corner of defenders, and they're going straight to a Watford player. And I don't know the stats, but it's quite worrying the amount of kind of misplaced passes there were today.
Well, in the second half, he
depressed.
He had 2 efforts on goal, which were more than he's had in the last probably 5 or 6 games that he's played for us. So at least he got a couple of strikes off. One was a header and one was a turn and shot, but he's still a long way from his best. I'm going to ask you one more question. Go on. Okay, Norwich away. Is it Brighton at home next after that?
I'll have to check. Yeah, is it Villa or Brighton? I can't remember. I think
it's Norwich, then Brighton, then I think it's Burnley and Villa. Those are the 4 teams, right? 4 games. How many points do you reckon we're going to get?
Jeff, don't do this to me. Right, I'm going to look at the Bournemouth fixtures now on the BBC website as I speak, just to confirm which matches that we've got coming up. So in January, we've got Norwich on the 18th, Brighton and Hove Albion at home under the lights on the 21st. We've got the FA Cup interlude with Arsenal, of course, but we're going to forget that for now. And then after that in February, we've got Aston Villa at home, Sheffield United away, Burnley away, and then we come to Chelsea. But there's a month or so of big games there.
Those 5 games.
Yeah. We've got to get 10 points.
What do you reckon? 10 points. Honestly, if we get 2 at the moment, I think that would be a result playing the way we're playing. I just feel so depressed about it after today.
You know what? It's not a surprise to hear you say that. What was and wasn't a surprise was that obviously when I go down and do the interviews for the YouTube channel, I sort of try to sort of get in a position in the ground where I can literally hot foot it out to the usual position that we're in, and I did so at 2-0. And then first lad I interviewed, little Tom. Bless him. He's a little. I don't know how old he is. He's like 7 or 8 or something. Maybe his mum can let us know how old he is, because he's a little legend. Fair play to him. He's been on the channel before. He's so small that I was like, oh my god, do I kneel? Do I kneel here or do I just crouch down? But anyway, I chatted to him and he said, yeah, Watford 3-0, and I thought to myself, well, was it really 3-0? Have I actually? You missed a goal at the end there. And as it transpires, I did. As I haven't seen it, Jeff, can you talk me through what on earth happened for the third goal for Watford?
So they ball breaks into our half, and Frano is sort of out of position, but heads the ball direct to their winger, which is a really good assist to their attack, actually. And they break forward. Ball goes into the box. I think it gets blocked, and then it falls to Pereira, who does a really good volley. You sort of a bit like the second goal in a way, where you thought, where are the people throwing their bodies on the line to get in front of that? And where there should have been 2, there was only 1, and it was good finish. So another one where we were quite helpful. They caught us a bit on the break again. But honestly, the heads had gone way before that. The heads went after that first goal. At 0-0, we were still in that game, but after we conceded, we were most definitely dead and buried, which is really worrying.
Okay, well, Jeff, thanks so much for your views on that game. And remember to leave a comment below about how you feel about it. But also, if you haven't already, do remember to subscribe to the channel. But why not also download the audio podcast as well by going to your podcast app and searching Back of the Net Bournemouth. On the audio pod, you'll also hear some Do You Remember trivia, a preview of our next match, which we're all looking forward to, of course. Your audio thoughts, and also some raw match audio from the day as well, and also some behind the scenes news about how you can help on the podcast as well. But for now, Jeff, thanks very much.
Cheers. Nice one.
We'll see you in the next video. Up the Cherries.
God, can't wait.
Back in the net! Back in the net!